You messaged me yesterday with a pretty compelling story. Kind of has a lot of moving parts, but essentially, because of medical issues with your husband, then yourself, you have been kind of clawing to stay in the middle class or just above water for years. Can you kind of take me back to the beginning?
Well, yeah, I mean, pretty much we were both working. He did trees for a living, and he's been working with an injury for like over 30 years. But it got to the point where he couldn't move for like 3, 4 days at a time, so he couldn't do it anymore. And he was helping me so I can go to college, but I had to drop out because he couldn't do it anymore. So then I had to work, and we went from two incomes to being normal middle class to barely above poverty. And it's getting ridiculous, and there's no jobs anywhere, so I have to work part-time jobs to just try to barely make what we can.
And what was his injury that he was, and how long was he working with the injury?
Okay. Well, when he was 18, he was in an accident, and he had five compound fractured vertebrae that he went back to work 2 months later, not under doctor's advisement, and it just went that way. It grew that way, so now they're like 50% of what they should normally be. And he does trees for a living, so he's a lot of climbing, a lot of moving, and he worked that way for 30 years, and he kept refracturing it because it found out in 2012 we got an MRI done, and they took one look at it and goes, "What's wrong with you?" And he still wanted to go to work after that, and we're like, no, we had to tell him not to. And then that's when I had to take over. But it was 33 years he worked with a broken back just to take care of everything.
So I'm assuming he just was completely immobile at one point that you had to basically make incomes for two, and you have a child.
I got two of them. Yeah, he pretty much like he'd go to work because he worked for himself. I mean, he did work for a tree company, but then eventually he worked for himself. And he'd go to work, and 5 hours of work would be 5 days of him being stuck in a bed that he can't move. And that's not right. I mean, he couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. That's how debilitating it was. And then you get all these doctor bills coming in because now we don't have his income, and now it's up to me. And at the time, I was only working part-time, so I had to quit school and get a full-time job. And then when I did that, I worked there for a while, but it started off at like 7:15.
What kind of job was this?
Actually, they call it the bomb factory.
What?
They call it the bomb factory. It made
You're wearing purple glasses. Is there anything in your car? No.
no, no, it's they made munitions for like the police department and stuff, where you make the shotgun shells and stuff like that, and fuses for stuff for the military and whatnot. And it's over in PA because it's the closest job I could get was over in another state, which is another whole thing with taxes. But I started off at 7.15 an hour, and I worked there for a few years until an incident happened at work, and there was a fire. And they deal with like tear gas and flashbangs and stuff, and it turns out I was allergic to it because I woke up in the hospital not knowing what happened. But I had anaphylactic shock and whatnot, and ultimately I had to quit that job. And then from then on, I had to go get part-time jobs after that. And I'm lucky if they started anywhere between $7 and $8 an hour. I mean,
Let me move backwards to your husband. When he wasn't able to work, did he get any type of disability or any help from the government?
actually, no. For 15 years, I supported him until we went to the doctors, because it was just my income, and even with welfare, they said I made too much. For a family of four, on nothing, I made too much.
And how much were you making?
I brought home about $280 a week.
$280 a week? And that was enough?
That I made it work.
No, I'm saying that's considered, you can't get welfare if you make $280 a week?
Yeah, the only thing I got was insurance for the kids. They wouldn't give us anything, and I had to pay for my own insurance.
And was $280 a week before taxes or after?
After. Before taxes, I think, I couldn't tell you. I ended up working a lot of overtime, and I still barely made it. But yeah, that was after taxes. And now it's like I make $540 a month, and I'm self-employed, so I don't have taxes taken out. But I have, between the bills and gas, $90. Now with him, I supported him for 15 years because he couldn't do it anymore. Finally, we were able to get insurance, and we went to the doctors. Once he got the MRI, we did apply for disability. They, of course, turned him down, like always. But then it took a while, and about a year and a half later, they finally gave him SSI, which isn't full disability, because they didn't want to go back because he did work so much. They would have had to pay him more. So they changed it from the time he got his MRI in 2012, which he wasn't employed, so they can pay him the least amount possible.
And when he got insurance, what was that under? Was that Obamacare or something else?
That was the Medicaid card at first. And then once we got his SSI, he got the Medicaid, I think is what it is.
Can you take us through the process? Because most people listening would think, well, if he's literally immobile and can't work, why did it take so long to get disability?
Well, first of all, what they don't tell you is when you fill out the application, they have like 4 different options of disability, and you're not sure which one it is. So when we filled out the paperwork, we filled out for disability. I thought it was the one we were supposed to pick. They said it wasn't, and they automatically denied him. They didn't even look at anything. They just, nope, you don't get it. Then we called and talked to some people, but we went through a lot of this process because we're not technically married. They wanted to use my income base, but we're not married, and then it was a whole big process, and they wanted to determine whether or not we were married or not, which was super easy to figure out. But
Isn't there common law marriage laws if you've been with someone for long enough?
not in Ohio. They got rid of those in Ohio 20 years ago or so. It used to be if you were with them for 10 years, you were common law, but they got rid of that a couple years before I got with him. So then we went through that process. Eventually, the local Social Security office in Ashtabula, we made an appointment with him there, and the lady was super nice. She helped him out with everything, and he had to go see one of their doctors and stuff. And they filed it under SSI instead of the SSD, I think is the disability. So he's just got a supplemental income instead of an actual disability check. So they don't even quite label him as disabled, but enough. It's weird, and it's annoying. Although it took about a year and a half to do it. Most people I know, like his best friend was in the same car with him and has almost the same identical problems, and he's been trying for disability for 10 years, and they still keep denying him because a lot of the paperwork's not there from, 35 years ago. The hospital's not even there. And that's the problem. So the reason he got what he got is because they didn't go by the original accident because he worked afterwards.
So basically it's a castle built on bureaucratic bullshit that keeps actually disabled, handicapped, whatever, from being able to get any type of safety net.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, I honestly, I wanted to slap somebody, but I can't. I mean, I wanted to punch my computer. And every time I got a notification, it was ridiculous. You jump through all these hoops, and he's literally disabled. I mean, doctors take one look at his x-ray and go, oh my God, how'd you get here? You know? Where other people, they can get it easily. And I know people and they talk about the system and scam and whatever. And I know people on both sides. And that screws it up for the people who need it. But to categorize somebody, I mean, literally, half his spine is broken. It's hard for him to get around. And they're saying he's not disabled. Well, but we'll give you a supplemental income. And it's just like, well, we'll hire you part-time so we don't have to pay you benefits. And that's basically what Social Security is doing to him.
Well, if they said you filled out the form the wrong thing, why didn't they then tell you this is the one you need to?
Transfer it over. I asked them that too, and they said no, we had to start all over. And I'm like, it was a simple click of one button, one box. That was it. I'm like, then uncheck that box and check it on that one. But they don't explain it. Even their website doesn't even explain it. Because I went through all of it myself because he couldn't figure it out either. And then we had to call, and God forbid you get a hold of anybody. Because I think there's like 3 people that work in that poor building, you know.
This is local people you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, I tried calling the national one. Yeah, I might as well call the IRS. There's nobody there. And they weren't exactly helpful. But it doesn't explain anything. And it really sucks because he had all the doctors and everything behind him. And it took that long. I mean, like I said, it's just...
My assumption is because you hear a lot of talk about, oh, there's 20 million more people insured under Obamacare, which is great. But I'm assuming Obamacare would be too expensive. You might have looked into it, but it was too expensive to go on Obamacare for him.
Yeah. I couldn't afford it. I mean, even when I was working full time, my insurance, and that was even before Obamacare kicked in. No, actually, it was about around the same time. I had already paid for mine, but since we're not married, I can't have him covered, so he'd have to get his own.
I think we need to have a quickie marriage ceremony.
That's what everybody kept saying. But I mean, why should I have to force myself to do that? So it's dumb. I mean, if I want to pay the insurance to cover somebody, then let me pay for it. But we looked into it, and the insurance was costing too much. And honestly, even now, it's cheaper to get Medicaid from the state. You know, I mean, I pay my taxes and everything; it pays for it, so why not? It's just it took so long, and we just fit into this tiny little loophole for 3 months. They made a clerical error and gave us both medical cards. And that's how we got the doctor's appointment. Otherwise, we'd have to pay out of our pocket for it because we can't afford the insurance.
So the original doctor's appointment to diagnose him with 5 broken vertebrae and all this was through a clerical error?
Basically, yeah. Because they told me for years I could only get insurance for the kids because they're kids. I couldn't get myself covered. I couldn't anything. Whether I was working or not, they wouldn't cover me. And they sure as hell wouldn't cover him. But something had happened that year when we filled out stuff, and then suddenly all 4 of us got insurance cards. And the first thing I did was make an appointment for him. And then from then on, then they gave it to us.
Now, not that I'm questioning your mindset about marriage, but if you were married, would a lot of these things he would have been granted disability or Medicaid?
If we were married, I doubt he would. He might maybe have gotten disability, but I doubt they would have paid what he was due, what he was owed, because they were so focused on how much I made. Because like everything, they take your income into consideration.
All $275 of it.
Yeah, basically, you know, and it's like, I'm supporting 4 people here. What difference does it make?
Well, that was my next question. How do you support 4 people off of $275 a week?
That's what I used to get. I get $140 a week now.
$140 a week now?
Yeah.
So how do you live?
We basically don't have much. I mean, because we live out in the country, we have a wood burner. But we have the electric bill and a phone bill, which I have the internet with, which is included. So there's 2 bills there. And
So you got electric
and the phone.
and the phone.
That's it.
Okay, food.
Out of pocket. We do grow gardens and stuff because we're fortunate, though. We got enough land for that. Between that and just friends and family helping. We figured it out between gas. Like, his SSI helps a lot with the food. We do get food stamps. Not much, considering how much we make. So it helps a little bit. But most of the money comes out of his SSI check. My money pays the bills, and I have $90 at the end of the month. Well, for the whole month for extras. Like today, my extras for this week was $20, and I used it for gas to come here. So.
And you said that you had a health problem with allergies and stuff. Have you had any other issues that have packed up some bills, or you're better now?
No, well, not working there helps because it turns out I was allergic to the tear gas. But I also ended up with, I have a pinched nerve coming out, the nerve that comes out of your spinal cord in between your vertebrae. So my legs go numb. And I've had that for about 3 years now. And I'm still waiting. The options I have are shots, which apparently because of all the problems they're having, there's a backlog on that. So I got to wait another 6 months or who knows how long. Or I get surgery and then be out for 6 months or who knows how long.
I'm assuming you're not fully covered to get surgery.
I don't know. I had surgery. They did cover it. See, I don't know if they'll cover it this year because usually they only allow you like 1. And I had one earlier this year because I had a tumor in my abdomen that was growing and they wanted to take it out. And that was back in May. So I was out for a couple weeks there too.
And was that a benign tumor?
Yeah, it was benign. They had to test it. It was weird. But fortunately, I mean, they thought it was. I mean, that sucked. So, and then that just adds to everything. And then you're getting bills for, you know, and like the insurance will cover some of the bills. But even like now, he had to go to a pain management and the insurance was supposed to cover it. And now we're getting bills for it. So now I have to ask the insurance and see what they're going to cover, but I don't have an extra $500, $600 to pay for a bill for a doctor to tell him that they can't do anything for him. And in the last 3 years, he's had a heart attack and a stroke. So he really doesn't like doctors. So it takes a lot to go there and then to get a bill for something that was supposed to be covered. And with me, I have no idea if it's going to get covered or not. I gave up asking and just find out. Usually they'll tell me if they schedule it, they'll call me and tell me if they'll cover it. Like the MRI took 3 years to get because the insurance wouldn't pay for it. They said they wanted me to go through 6 weeks of therapy, and I did that 3 times and they still wouldn't cover it. And finally I had to go to a specialist who was going to give me surgery, I guess, and he pushed it through, and then I got it and they found out what the problem was. But I still go to work. My job's manual. It's a lot of bending over. It's a lot of cleaning, and
What's your job?
I clean floors for a local grocery store. So a lot of the big machines and bending over and scraping stuff and everything else. And
With pinched nerves and in your vertebrae.
yeah, and not being able to feel my legs because they just go numb. Like when your foot falls asleep, just picture it from like your waist down. That's pretty much what I've been doing for the last.
Capitalism, isn't it a great thing?
I know, it's special.
I want to ask just from a human level, because talking to you, you're very articulate, kind of calm, but I'm getting stressed and depressed thinking of just listening to you. So I'm assuming this has been pretty stressful and at times overwhelming for you.
Yeah, I've screamed and yelled and all that. It's nice to live out in the country where people don't look at you like you're weird, but I got to the point where it's just, fuck them. I couldn't get stressed out any more than I already was. It was making me physically ill. And then I realized I can't do it anymore. And that's the part that sucks, because then you're just accepting it. But now it's like, okay, I don't have much, but we'll make do with what we have. And then screw it. And then I got to this point where it's just, I'm going to be happy and just let it go and stop worrying about everything. It still frustrates me. I still have moments where I scream and yell and kids walk away. But most of the time I don't. I just try to do something else and take it out on there, because it's almost pointless. It's like I'm constantly arguing with somebody, or like the doctors, and it's not their fault, it's the insurance. And it's not the insurance fault. Well, some of it is, but they make rules and everything else, and then they screw everybody. And the problem is the people who actually need it don't get it. And I'm perfectly content. I'm not about like the whole material thing or anything. I'm fine having a crappy car and, my house, my kids, and all that stuff. That's fine. I'm happy with that. But it would be nice to do stuff with your kids, because you always want more for them and have them have more opportunities. But you're not getting that anymore. They're having fewer opportunities than even I did when I was in school, because when I graduated high school, I could get a job and support myself and live by myself. They can't do that now. They have to have roommates. They have to have like 3 jobs. It's something's got to give. And I don't know, something's just kind of broke. So I just kind of accept it. But yet I'm going to be happy about it.
Now,
Is that weird?
let me ask you, you said you had to drop out of school. Was it just because you couldn't afford it anymore?
Yeah, it got to the point where a lot of things like supplies and everything because I was going for art education. So, and books and everything came out of my pocket. Plus, driving 3 hours to school every day takes a lot in gas and babysitting and such. But between that and with him not working, I can't afford it. So between that and the kids and everything, I chose them and gave up that. So I had to compromise and sacrifice what I wanted to do to make sure that they're happy. And he kind of felt bad about that, which is part of the problem that he's going through. And it's just
Your husband.
Yeah. Because he, everything was put on me. I mean, at the time that I dropped out, our daughter had scarlet fever and our son had mono. And then I have an old man who's stuck in bed and I had a broken foot. So it's like if everything could happen all at once, it did. And I didn't think it could get any worse, but it did. But we're slowly working our way out of it to where we're just accepting the misery we're in. which isn't right, but at least we're happy, if that makes any sense. Because, I mean, I know it sucks, but I got more than what most people. At least I'm not schlepping away a butt ton of hours like I used to, because one, I can't, but then I don't get to experience and have the time with my kids or have the time to actually do stuff, even though we really can't afford to do anything, even if it's just going to the park or just going down to the creek, or, we started to appreciate the simpler things, and it sucks because I'd like to be able to afford to take my kids to the fair or, and go on a vacation somewhere, and you can't do that. But the very simplest thing is I'd like my kids to be able to have a job, and they can't even have that because there's like way more people than there are jobs. And I understand that we live in the country and there's not going to be as much, but everything on the outskirts of it, because it's mostly turning into a suburb now, there's not even that there either. It's like there's 5 factories you could work at and they're never hiring. So what's he going to do?
They're firing instead of hiring.
Exactly. There's a lot more layoffs than there are actually hiring. And if they do hire, they hire through a temp service, and you're only working for 90 days and then you're out of a job again. Or you have to drive an hour and a half to get to work somewhere. And it's like, I just want to know that when I die, my kids are going to be able to take care of themselves, and so on and so forth and so on. And at this point, you don't know. I mean, you have no idea how they're going to manage. It's like they're either going to get a job at McDonald's and work fast food and then have people, putting them down because they work fast food for minimum wage, but it's the only thing they can do just to try to survive. And that's bullshit. I mean, yeah, they could be happy doing that. That's not a problem. It's just, you just want better, and you can't get better if there's nothing there. So you're trying to make something out of nothing.
Let me ask you, when you hear people like Paul Ryan call people on welfare or whatever it is the takers, and when you you read about $6 trillion spent in Iraq and Afghanistan, and trillions, to pay banks back for illegal behavior, and you're going through everything you've described, what goes through your mind?
Must be nice to have a giant EBT card for the government. I mean, that's basically what it is. They get loopholes and everything else, and they get to spend money on shit that doesn't help the people. I mean, they want to sit there and say, oh, well, you're getting food stamps, so you're just using the system. No, I literally can't have a job. I would prefer to work and support myself, and I did that for years and took care of the family for years without the help. But now I need it. I invested in the state for them to do that. I invested in the country for do that. I invested in the community. I helped them out. They should be able to help everybody else out. That's humanness. I mean, but you want to sit there and just blow a bunch of money on bullshit that nobody wants to hear about. I understand wars happen, but a lot of them were bullshit and we shouldn't have been there in the first place. But it's like, stop spending money on shit. I mean, personally, I would like to see more money spent on education than on the damn military. Because if you had more education, you might not actually have as many problems. I mean, the simplest thing that gets me is, because I talked to Clarence the other day about it. If you want to know about the dumbing down of the country, everybody remembers this. The 3 R's of school: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Except for they're not R's. Reading is an R. Writing is a W. Arithmetic is an A. But yet everybody accepts that because that's what they were told. Well, fuck that. You need to change that. That's the biggest part right there. You want a mass amount of people ignorant, so they'll follow whatever you do. I think you need a mass amount of people intelligent so they can fix the fucking problems. And it's just, I'm sorry. If the government's going to get paid a shit ton of money to work part-time, then why the fuck am I, scraping change for gas money to go to work? That in a nutshell pretty much pisses me off.
Well, I'll end with this. I think in pop culture today and the news today, people like Captain Sully Sullenberg are described as heroes, and maybe they are. And, people who invent things and all sorts of things. But I think people like you really deserve a lot more credit because it's not sexy. It's not going to be made into a movie, but what you've been going through for 20, 30 years, whatever it is remarkable. and I just wish all the best for you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.